might be okay if they finish it off quickly. Thankfully, they also have a Moonkin who can off-heal a little, actually, so having those extra off-heals on the tank might help them out to finish off the boss, but it's still quite high, so they want to make sure they finish off this boss fast before the tank goes down as he drops incredibly low. So just some issues, unfortunately, here. We see the regrowths coming out by the Moonkin, just trying to save this pull, while Perplex is already pulling Echelon now after they finished off that 4th Pride mob.
Dude, Ryzen is such a man. He was able to heal. Okay, they were moving the Pride the whole entire time from where they spawned it all the way up to the Echelon room. That is awful to do to your healer.
Yeah, that's
for most
horrible.
groups, I would recommend don't move the Pride like ever. Like there's no need to move it that far. But for these MDI teams, they want to make the most out of their time. They're already having to fight the Pride because they didn't all have their melds up. So they're moving it and like hitting it.
Что там, как успехи с
They
качеством?
do a great job of doing that. Now Echelon has been engaged. He's starting to die pretty quickly. They did a great job of using the first upheaval cast from him to be able to stomp on all of those little ads and make sure that they didn't resummon.
Можно. Ну, отлично.
So Perplex doing a great job on the side of P2's Angels.
Этот мистер Twitch, он может рофлить со всех нас, к сожалению.
Skip this Pride. They have pulled a Stoneborn into it. It looks like to help them deal with it just a little bit. The anti-magic zone has come out for them as well. But Perplexed is a decent amount ahead right now.
Yeah, definitely. Just having a pretty clean run outside of those 4 deaths that they had and the Shadow Melt mistake as well. Which, to be fair, I would say that's not clean, considering
Тут уже
that
босс
this is a
почти
time
упал, а
trial
там
map,
чуваки только бегут к
and
нему.
that's the map they practice the most. But we've actually seen this in the past.
Блин, ну они
as well,
слишком
that
какие-то лютые.
teams
Как этих
fail to
роботов
do the
вообще
most on their
остановить?
time trial maps, just because you're practicing those maps specifically for that long, you're
Жизнь
risking
задра.
more and more on those maps compared to the maps that you only play in the tournament itself, right? Because you know all the other teams have so much time to get the best strategies for those time trial maps specifically, and then you even want to improve your time even further between time trials and the actual tournament. So they just try to risk more and more things, and then you see those huge mistakes and huge wipes coming in because it's just so incredibly risky what they're doing. So that's definitely something we've seen before. Yeah.
And I mean, like you're saying, they're down to do a strategy that may only have a 50% success rate because they also have 5 attempts. But then they don't go back and revisit their strategies all the time. And then it's like, oh, because we have to do this on live. And then they wipe and you're like, well, now what are they going to do?
Сейчас собачки будут. Или они скипать их будут.
Perplex does end up downing Echelon. And I would say this
Пошли рубиться с мишками.
things get a little bit more tame. I think the first
Бля, еще 2 пака собирает, я понял.
They're pulling straight into
А, ну и босс, правильно, да, халява.
This is very scary.
Yeah, this is the pull we've seen Echo do as well, where they just gather up everything and pull it on top of this 3rd boss here, which is incredibly dangerous because you have the inspired mobs on top.
Там что-то вообще жестко было.
None of these ads are actually seeable. Divine Flare just needs to tank this like a man, really, and you can see also him using the Kyrian Vial to get rid of
Где-то
the
фрисмага увидел.
because necrotic is incredibly dangerous, and you need to get that timing right? You need to make sure you're delaying your Kyrian Vial as long as you can, because if you use it too early, you're gonna get another set of necrotic stacks, and then you just don't have a way of resetting it. So good job on
Я не знаю, может и
resetting
есть.
those stacks, but he's up to 15 stacks again. So maybe he's got
Я не
to
увидел,
reset it one
типа,
more
первым...
time,
Ну,
but
типа,
it's
я
only the
пробежался
boss
глазами,
fight
я
at
не
this
увидел.
Yeah, and a major difference that we've seen this
Может, какие-нибудь эхо будут, или кто, не эхо, а как они? Экзорсус какие-нибудь, или кто там еще может прийти. Из СНГшных чевов.
I mean, obviously they really want Night Elf to be able to meld off Pride, but like even if they wanted to be dwarf for the necrotic, the Vengeance Demon Hunter on Alliance only has access to being Night Elf.
Да, они какие-то ненормальные на самом деле, они такие паки пулят. Я не понимаю, как они на них живут. Типа, что нужно нажимать, чтобы выжить при этом паке на танке, например?
And they mind control it, then a shine is the Venthyr, so he's
Еще
the one
выдыхаем
using that
монк.
extra
Да, я
action button
понял.
to mind control it. And then once the button was ready again,
Прикольно.
pulled the second Stoneborn in.
Я думаю, типа СНГ чевов вообще почти нету.
So definitely utilizing all of the Stoneborns, making sure they get all of that extra damage. And once they finish up the boss, they really only have the mini boss left they have to deal with. We've seen most teams just
Ну да, я хотел об этом сказать, что типа тяжело понять, даже если СНГшные челы есть, и они, например, играют с бургами, то ники-то будут английские.
It's hard for me to tell how tight that timing really is because all of the groups that we've seen.
ФГ искать эти классы. Я, кстати, согласен. И тут везде есть ДК. Я доволен. Хоть на ДК меня возьмут в ключ какой-нибудь выше 12.
P2's does elect a Bloodlust at this boss, whereas Perplexed Bloodlust does come up in approximately 50 seconds. Right now, I think that if you're P2's, you're hoping Perplexed has a wipe on the final boss on Lord Chamberlain, where
Не, на самом деле, Сервал, ты не прав. Типа в Европе и Америке очень популярны Вовжи.
Yeah, looks like they're shadow melting off. Thankfully managed to do so as well. That was pretty close. Looked like the Pride mob was about to hit one of the players, but they managed. And now they're engaging the boss, as you mentioned. Their Bloodlust is available in 15 seconds, so they can still use it on the boss. But yeah, definitely not as clean of a run as they had in their time trials.
Типа суть в том, что WoW играет огромное количество людей, но это то же самое, что сколько людей закрывает 15 ключи плюс в тайм. Их будет единицы. И, в принципе, эти почти все единицы и посмотрят MDI. Так что это же всегда так.
Some people don't know necessarily that they always get thrown onto players or players' directions. And you can also see which direction they're being thrown at by the direction they look in. But yeah, sometimes it's really hard to see which direction they look in.
В итоге будет повторять как раз на самом деле вот этот слой людей, которые там выше 12 ключа.
So that's the only way you can really safely dodge those.
Look at this. So during the Ritual of Woe, a Shine and Divine are both standing in the boss's hitbox, and if you do this at a specific angle, you're able to...
Да понятно, да, что типа с каждой неделей шмот растет, но в целом я имею в виду. Типа большинство людей же, они сидят просто в свое удовольствие играют. Те, кто действительно типа задрачивает что-то высоко, их единицы, как и в любой игре. Это то же самое, что в Доте. 5000 ММР, типа, ну, для меня это супер мало, например. Но среднее, ну, типа, если статистически брать, то, типа, там, выше 5-6 тысяч, это уже несколько процентов всего игроков. Я вот о чем говорю.
So well done utilizing that hitbox, as you mentioned. And there we go, they actually failed it there for a second. Two beams going through, unfortunately. Well done. We see the Contra is being procced by Wolf Disco, though. He did use his ice block to recover and did thankfully manage to heal him back up. But yeah, that almost caused one death at least. But they now managed to finish off the boss and they're gonna win this series. 2-0, moving up into the upper bracket, while Peter's Angels unfortunately have to go into the lower one.
Remind me never to make Tettles angry because he just jinxed the heck out of Perplexed.
Dude,
right
that's not my
at
fault.
the very end.
That's not my fault. Don't blame me.
Да, там что-то лютые вообще челики. Ну, например, вот сейчас трансляцию смотрит 50к на ютубчике. Ты говоришь, мало посмотрит, Костян. Че, пробуем в огненные просторы прорываться? Как Нила бесконечно везет. Ники, я, кстати, заметил у всех очень мемные в Вове, потому что, ну, типа, реально в Европе очень ну, типа, настолько много народу играет в WoW. И, типа, это же одна из таких игр довольно древних. Сколько лет уже Вову? 20? Типа, у всех уже ники с какими-то дописками, типа, глупыми. Кривыми, там, типа, какими-то иероглифами, цифрами, все, ну, типа, вот это все идет прибавкой к нику. У кого-то там вон 2 у кого-то еще что-то. Да, то есть за столько лет просто, типа, все никнеймы заняты уже. И у всех довольно мелкие никнеймы, мемные. Че там, Денчик, есть свод у тебя в огненные просторы? В сверх 3 вариациях это немецкий язык только. Не английский. Че, пойдем торгast пока, что ли? Все равно заняться пока нечем. Ну, да, просторы с нуля все скорее. Надо просто найти людей будет. Пока можно торгast сходить. Повышает вас группу. Войти. Это как работает? Как меня сюда чувак затащил? Пок. Я порычал на весь рейд. Здравствуй, Денчик. Так что, мы босса идем бить, нет? Что там че пишет? Я же вар.
3, 2, 1.
Чардж. Куда паук делся? Че он сыт на нас? Оп. Это я зря, да? Тихо. Ск. Миссия невыполнима, потерпел поражение. Ай, что там голос? Тун-тун-тун-тун-тун-тун-тун-тун. Я сдох на варе. Блин, ничего не написалось, ну ладно. Я в этой инсте ни раз не был. Я залез в какой-то паутине и сдох. А, 35-й шмот. 35-й, точнее, вау, 40-й шмот, все заскелилось. Там бешенство у паука постоянно стакается. А переагривать танки-то будут, чтобы бешенство спало, или это не так работает? Классно отдыхаем, Данчик. Как дела у тебя? Ну, почему дохлым ничего не пишешь? У нас танк сдох, сейчас еще не пройдем. Второй танк сдох. Пойдем читать обилки. Бешенство. Меняет заклинание бешенства до конца боя, увеличивая урон. Угу. Когда за применение тлеющее разрушение, она впадает в бешенство. Опасную позицию, спуститься к игрокам и перестанет призывать на лицо больше звук. Ага. Это энрейдж фаза просто. Там 200к. Кому как не нам бесконечно везет. Блин, ну они не добьют. Ложитесь просто, да и все. Из ДПС я авк лежал. В каком ДПС речь вообще? Охренеть, к боссу еще бежать надо. Блин, я бы своей пачкой сюда сходил. Может, соберем людей сегодня? Прикольная инста. Костян, не хочешь? Хотя не сегодня, наверное, уже. Потому что сегодня там MDI-чик кончится, я думаю, поздно, я спать пойду. Ну да, я вот тоже думаю, что сегодня авка, завтра можно пойти.
У меня самые выгодные цены.
Котейка не справился. Бог. Читер на вороке. Так, наверх не залазить к пауку, правильно? All your boost, then boss пойдет вниз. Kill spiders. Gain first fire shield. Топ. Понял. Примерно понял. Что мы... Ну пошлите пулить. Давайте одного босса хотя бы убьем, а то скоро и начнется опять игра. Схилавка. В крови паладин. Кому как не нам бесконечно. Давайте старт. С пауком посремся и пойдем смотреть дальше. Инсты. Жарится. А наверх залазить-то надо, кстати, или нет? Чат, подсказывайте, что нам делать. Сверкать и гореть. Или мы типа убиваем паучков? Не отнимаем хп у босса. Вообще, насколько я понимаю, мы должны подниматься вверх все. Мы убиваем тараканов и поднимаемся вверх. Блять, паук упал уже. Ладно, хуярим паука. Пошел Дипос. Происходит огненные просторы, лупим боссов. Пока ждем следующую карту на MDI. Же нам пизда. Тут шмотки падают 200, как с рейда. Типа, когда вот этот происходит понедельно какие-то события, связанные типа с ТП во временем, старые инсты плюс старые рейды, то из них типа падают шмотки хорошие. То есть отсюда можно 200 шмотку вытащить. Можно персонажа одевать прикольно. Плюс старый контент посмотреть. Ну, либо для тех, кто его играл, поностальгировать. У нас танк опять сдох. БРнуть нет его? Рейд сейф даю, рейд сейф. Ебать. Сосать паук. Шмотку, конечно же, я не получу здесь. Вон Жао упал челику, одноручка 200. Че, одна шмотка на весь рейд? А нет. Вышли посох на инту. Тринька, а нет, кольцо. 200 кольца. Зачем тебе? $213, 200 кольцо. Ладно. Какие раньше рейды долгие были, на самом деле. Типа нужно было трэш, вот это все чистить, ходить. Вот там карта стартует, я съебал, кстати. Спасибо, что засумонил, Денчик.
Finish the dungeon, so let's just see if they can do it as clean again as they did last time. Gargoyle stream, we did not see the rest of the dungeon after the first boss, but we do know how to do the first pull here. They use that cage, the Vengeance Demon Hunters, you see on the Inspired at, and they pull everything else together. While on the other side, Golden Guardians are pulling the Inspired mob into the pack and just nuking everything down.
Рейд
So a little bit
сегодня?
riskier,
Нет,
but
вряд
more
ли.
time efficient to just nuke the Inspired mob with the trash group.
Yeah, and I mean, the Harvester definitely also does a cast that will heal itself, so you need to make sure that you have ample amounts of kicks to be able to deal with it. Like that Harvest Essence right there, they saw a Gargoyle ending up kicking. So both teams are doing a great job. These Tyranian villagers are very, very dangerous.
Не думаю, что Рагнарос сильнее Динатрия в геройке.
On him there by both of the villagers. It does so the overgrowth doesn't only stun you after the channel is over, but the channel itself also does a pretty huge amount of damage. And he got hit by 2 at the same time. That was very unlucky. And he just went down, didn't manage to out-heal this one. But thankfully the rest is right there, so he just released and came back to the group.
Yeah.
Сильные боссы,
you
кстати.
do also see that they blew like a bunch of their Nelf racials, trying to make sure that they are able to cancel the cast of the overgrowth onto them. And that seems pretty reasonable because like they're not going to need to night elf anything else. JB now doing this mind control tech that we saw earlier, mind controlling that ad, allowing a bunch of the mobs to just melee it, and then the rest of the group will jump in, leap in, kill that Soul Reaver off whenever it is low.
Погоди, это же уже было.
Continue to kick these harvesters because they do have that harvest essence cast that we were talking about earlier. Whereas on the side of Does Gargoyle stream, they are caging their ad, their inspired mob, so they're able to continue to deal with the harvest essence casts just as they go.
Они опять переигрывают, что ли?
Yep, and it looks like Gargoyle stream is a little bit faster this time around because of the issue the Golden Guardians had with finishing off those two villagers.
Контент звучит охрененный. Да, я думаю, там прикольно будет босса посмотреть. Я завтра спрошу, может кто-то захочет, из нашей пачки соберем людей, попробуем эту инсту. Если 2-3-9 в идеале наберем, будет кайф.
Inspired mob at the same time, and with the pride mob, sorry.
Опять РМК.
And Golden Guardians, they used to pull the pride mob on top of the boss, but looks like they're not doing it that time. So they're just playing it a little bit more safe, or just waiting up until they can pull it. Looks like they're just soloing it this time.
Huh. I assumed that they were going to be waiting for CDs. Okay, so they're waiting for something.
Oh, there we go, yeah.
I wonder what they were waiting for.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Oh well. They were clearly waiting for something to come up before they were able to pull.
Ну, тут равные две команды. Интересно, на самом деле, кто выйдет.
Now they do down that pride relatively quickly. They're going to be hitting Droman. Both teams going to be hitting Droman. And then once Droman does die, they start to channel on top of Ingra Malok, making Ingra Malok take, I think it's 100% increased damage. And that's also amplified by the pride buff. So you're able to burn Ingra really, really low. I think we've seen teams get Ingra on the side of Golden Guardians, get it to about 25-ish%, and on the side of Gargoyle stream, it's about 50. So it definitely comes down to a difference in comp and where cooldowns have been utilized. Bloodlust does come out for both sides, though, as they are burning straight through the boss.
Yeah, we see all of the cooldowns coming up here for Dusk Gargoyle stream. Let's see how much damage they can get, how much HP they can get the boss to, and it looks like 38%, which was approximately the same amount they got it last time as well. So they will definitely need 1 second phase. While Golden Guardians, they have this Moonkin, right? The Moonkin does a lot of burst damage to this boss, specifically with Celestial Alignment and the Convoke coming in. So they got the boss a lot lower, 18% this time. They might decide to nuke the boss here because the last time they only got him to 20 and decided to not nuke. But they got him 3% lower this time, so that's definitely a nuke call, as you can see. They are not switching to Droman, they're just trying to finish off Ingra. Hopefully they have enough damage this time so they don't get this shield again, the 80% damage reduction, because that would cause some issues for them again. But looks like they should be fine.
Yeah, they're definitely going to get the shield, but I think they'll get it at like 2 to 3% of the boss, which is, you're able to burn through it. It's not the 5% or whatever that we saw it come through last time. So yeah, it comes through right at 2% here. Now, there's a lot of damage going out to the group. Oh, the boss is able to just be killed straight.
Ну, у них еще лучше получилось в этот раз. Ну, тут, походу, Golden Guards выиграет.
Exactly, yeah. Anyway, we're moving on here as Gargoyle needs this extra phase, but they now can get the boss down as well. So both of the teams actually playing this boss better, right? Golden Guardians getting the one phase that they intended to get with their Moonkin composition.
Это как работает?
Also Gargoyles getting the two phase that they were wanting to get anyway. But we saw that the first try they needed 3 phases, so definitely an improvement there. And now we see Golden Guardians pulling that extra trash pack from the right side, basically through the wall, getting an extra pack. One of them is inspired, so no CCs available here, which can cause some issues, but this trash is not as dangerous, so really nothing that you need to interrupt here. It's just a lot of tank damage. So as long as Lady is fine, everyone is fine, basically.
Yeah, and
Default
it does definitely speed up
пачку через жопу мира какую-то.
Pack into a 6-pack and effectively doesn't cost you any more time to pull the extra 4 mobs. If you're looking to do this on like your live realms, you just like walk up to that right side wall towards the back of that, I don't even know what it's called, like a circular item, and you're able to just like tag the pack. It's really easy to do, and it's pretty efficient. So now both teams are making their way through the maze. It looks like Golden Guardians, I would say, is about 10 to 15 seconds ahead of Does Gargoyle's stream right now.
Definitely a little bit of a difference here in favor of Golden Guardians. We do have 1 death the death on Yoda that we had earlier on the first pack. So 5 seconds difference in favor of Gargoyle Stream, but Golden Guardians definitely ahead further than those 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So even with the death, they're still ahead. And it looks like they're just are going smoothly through this trash. The mace is fixed now, as we mentioned earlier. Yoda playing double on use trinket here. Actually see the Imperial Ordnance flying towards Yoda, so that is something we see Moonkins play in raids a lot.
Ну, Прайд под эту пачку, да, я уже видел. Ну, типа то, что... Я не увидел, что, типа, приводили пак из-за стены. Я вообще не знал, что так можно делать. Это прикольно.
He swapped to it after they had such a calamity on the first boss the first time through. So yeah, after they had that issue, he was like, all right, we're swapping a double on use, and then of course now they're way more consistent with how.
Не так, конечно, как скрипт было взорвать.
This Pride is dropping the whole entire group super low. Lip has to go into ice block. Shakib ends up going down. This is really scary. That Pride is at 20 stacks.
Ой, там монах отъехал.
Вставай,
локоть.
Able to get that Pride down. Shakib will be res. And now they're going to be making their way through the maze. But that's just another 5 seconds lost. We're on the side of does the Gargoyle Stream. They are still hitting that Pride. And
чувак видно все время просто валяется как локоть.
Yeah, and not only the 5 seconds, but also just getting the rest timer as well, needing to use that on the Shakib because they don't want to use the battle rest as well. And now we see the Gargoyle Stream actually getting done with their Pride as they're now moving on. We did see a mistake here by Golden Guardians, which shouldn't have happened. So hopefully that didn't cost them too much time as they're now engaging the next trash pack. Gargoyle Stream is also in this same room now. Both of them are
локоть валяется, сразу выигрывает турик. Пока легко. Здорово.
Yeah, so now we have the exact same percentage as well. We have 50% and 50% for Golden Guardians and Dusk Gargoyle Stream.
Yep, Golden Guardians does end up downing that trash pack, having to walk straight through those tornadoes. It looks like I think they probably only have one more pack of trash before.
Локоть настолько жесткий, что он лежа может выиграть турик, убить все два координаторы.
They're quickly on to the next room as well. So this is they're starting to close the gap a little bit on the side of the Gargoyle Stream.
Definitely. I mean, you can see they're at the same percentage now. A little bit about the difference between the classes, right? We have the Moonkin on Golden Guardian side, which enables you to get this one phase on the first boss, which saves you a lot of time. But for trash, overall,
я такой смотрю, что-то Хантера не так много дэмэджа. А потом смотрю, немного, это в 5700. Понятно. И потом он подскочил с бурстом до 10 сразу.
But this is tyrannical, and the mobs die really quickly, and Moonkins just don't have as much burst AoE damage as like a Hunter has. So I think that's a little bit of an advantage for the Hunter comp compared to the Moonkins. But for single target damage, Moonkins are just fine. They also do have a lot of damage for these Pride mobs as well. So yeah, this is going to be incredibly close between those two teams at this point.
Interestingly enough, too, Does Gargoyle Stream ends up dropping out of combat before the Pride spawns. They're able to get through the doorway, so they're trying to position themselves slightly towards
несколько секунд просто разница.
And this allows Mistcaller to be pulled
Но Голден Гвардов типа 2 раза люди умирали. То есть там 2 челика отъезжали, это 10 секунд сверху.
For bosses, definitely in the favor of Golden Guardians. For trash, I feel like that Kyrian resonating arrow hunter is definitely a lot better. I do wonder if Golden Guardians, though, would be able to potentially burn Mistcaller before the last guessing game at 10% health, but...
I don't think so, or?
I don't think so either.
It's tyrannical, right? It's just such a huge amount of HP, and you only have like...
Блин, 229 шмот, как же они хуярят на самом деле.
Well, so...
It's really hard.
So you can queue dodgeball into the guessing game.
Я просто смотрю на цифры с таргет. Жесть какая.
It's not 8 seconds though, right? How long is the guessing game?
How long is the dodgeball? Is the dodgeball only 4 seconds?
I think the dodgeball's only like 2.
Понятно, да, здесь люди типа очень хорошо кнопки еще нажимают, но в целом 229 шмот плюс им же шмот
would be a massive time save. And now, does Gargoyle
Там
Stream
шмот,
start to pull
ты
ahead a little bit
идеально,
on
ну
the
типа,
boss?
там шмотки ты выбираешь, какие захочешь сам.
I mean, we
Там
said
не
that
одинаковые.
Moonkin damage
У
is
тебя
better on single target, but
просто
on this boss
ИТБ
specifically,
типа ограничивает,
unfortunately,
шмот можешь любой
Moonkin is not
выбирать.
that great because you have
Насколько
those
я
extra
понимаю.
targets. You can't use your convoke in the demission phase, otherwise it might hit random targets. Of course, you
Там
can use
типа
it on a
стоит,
boss, but you definitely don't want to use it when
там
the
типа стоит
boss is
несколько
up.
вендоров.
Otherwise, some of the damage might go in
Ты
there.
просто выбираешь
So
себе шмотки.
not as great, and you
Ну, я
really
так понимаю,
can't
что типа
make up that
контента
much
этого.
time
То
on this
есть
boss
рейд плюс
specifically,
инсты,
just because the
которые
intermission
есть
phases
8
are
штук.
fixed, they're percentage based,
И плюс
right?
замок
So
Нафри.
no matter how much damage you
И
have,
из
you will
этого
always get
контента
those
типа шмот.
intermission phases unless you skip the last one. But I doubt that it's possible considering that it is
Да, то
timeable
есть
and you need
5
to have like
человек
an
в
insane amount of
229
single target
шмоте,
bursts
это
to
вообще
be able
кайф.
to finish up the boss
Я бы
before you
покайфовал в таком
pass that
побегал
last
тоже.
intermission phase.
С радостью.
Yeah, and Yoda doesn't have a Celestial alignment up. It doesn't even look like they're going to go for it. It would be nuts if they were actually going to go for it and were able to pull it off though. But
I do
looks
think
like
it's
neither
possible on
team.
Fortified though, right? With the touch of that.
Potentially.
I mean, probably. Yoda going down.
Yoda goes down.
Опа, сова
Not great.
отъехала.
Another
Курлык,
5-second
вставай.
penalty. I mean, honestly,
А,
it
никто
will
риснуть
come
не
down to
может,
these
кроме совы.
3 5-second penalties.
Yeah.
Like, assuming that Gargoyle and Golden Guardians do a similar pull in this next section,
15 секунд уже проигрывает.
in a timely manner. I mean, Mistcaller is going to go down 15 seconds ahead.
Следующее обновление. Понятно.
They have to wait for the Mistcaller RP, but like.
Ну вообще, кстати, чтобы сейчас 229 шмот собрать, тебе нужно мифик закрывать минимум. 18-й ключ.
Really cool trick actually the last time where they used slow fall or levitate to basically just skip the trash. Those 3 trash packs, which
с ключей ты максимум 210 можешь получить
right?
сейчас.
But just using the slow fall is such a nice little mechanic to go past. But it looks like does Gargoyle stream just exactly the same thing without
Да,
the slow fall,
согласен.
just using the Demon Hunter.
Но там
case.
сегодня
So
вот есть
maybe
огненные
doesn't have
просторы
to be as
появились, можно
fancy
побегать
as it
свои
looks for
пачки
Golden
порофлить.
Guardians after all. So now they're gathering a big pull on their side with the
А
Inspired
так, типа,
Helm.
если только
That
нового
could
перса
potentially be very
качать, в
dangerous
лобби
because these
контента,
mobs
конечно,
cast
нет
an
пока
AoE
больше.
shield if not interrupted, and they also cast a heal. But since it is a low HP mob, they just nuked it immediately.
Yeah, they could also
Влад, ты псих, что ли?
mass dispel it off, or if you're horde, you could use Blood Elf Racial to be able to dispel off the shield.
Такие
But
игры
that stimulating
произносить.
regeneration,
Can
like
you
you see going
dispel
off
with
right
the
now.
Inspired up? I'm not actually sure if you can, if they're not immune to it. I don't know.
I would assume so, but I'm not 100% sure.
They are immune, Jack? Okay, so they are immune to mass dispel. Oh, no, okay, never mind.
No, you can't dispel, is what he's saying.
Jack is confusing me. Okay, so you can mass dispel, but you can only hit 5 targets. So I guess it's still not beneficial to let it go through because
Всего проснулся.
But looks like it went through for Golden Guardians here. And the mass spell coming out. There we go.
Ла-2 для купон бизнеса кайфовая.
Yeah, now does
Насколько я понимаю, там люди нормально так зарабатывают из-за гринд дерьма всего вот этого.
We need to reiterate, the Tyranian villagers do give 2.69% count
То
per.
есть, если
Both teams have
ты именно идешь, грубо говоря, в Ла-2 не играть, а работать, то вопросов никаких. А если ты просто идешь гриндить от балды, то ты ебанулся, у меня все.
Whenever the dungeon does end. So the Pride has spawned for Does Gargoyle stream. It looks like the Pride is about to spawn for Golden Guardians as well. And then basically all they have is like 1 trash pack apiece and Tradova to be able to deal with. And Does Gargoyle stream looks to be
Да, с 15-го ключа падает 210 шмот, и выше ничего нет.
Yeah, this is not looking very good for Golden Guardians at all. And I mean, this is the last game of the series, right? This is a best of 3. Golden Guardians 1-1.
За Дейли, ну типа, за недельные награды с хранилища выше шмот. А если просто выбивать с ключа, как награду из сундука поднимаешь ты, в конце инсты выше 210 нет.
So it's definitely their game to lose. And Dusk Gargoyle stream, they're fairly new, right? barely anyone in their team has even competed before in the MDI, so this is an incredibly good showing by their team, even considering that this is the first time they're competing live as well.
Сейчас нужно либо дрочить арену сидеть какую-то, либо собирать себе пак и типа когда мифики себе закрывать. Хотя бы по 3 босса на неделю. В мифик рейде. Больше делать нечего.
So they've had an excellent showing. Now, on the side of Golden Guardians, our MDI veterans, they're pulling a lot of these staghorns
Мне не нравится ПВЕ. ПВП точнее Вове. Арена только с... Ну, типа это надо разбираться, все остальное. Не впаду, на самом деле. Типа вечерком посидеть, почилить, посмотреть ПВЕ контент. Всегда кайф. А сидеть задрачивать арену день и ночь, это не ко мне.
No, right? They still need to do something afterwards.
No. They still need one pack
so they still have to play
afterwards.
some trash, yeah.
They need to get to like 95. It is about where they need to be. Yeah, both teams do. So, I do suspect that they will.
На свой язык.
Pride. So, Pride is not exactly
купон бизнес туда входит.
We've seen with a bunch of the Night Elf shenanigans, being able to skip them and whatnot. So electing to skip the 100% Pride makes a lot of sense as well. Looks like Tradova is about to go down for Does Gargoyle stream here momentarily, starting to get pretty low.
Для Твича, чтобы бан не получить.
The boss is still at 55%. I would say that if Does Gargoyle stream takes this would be an upset, especially since they are the 5th seed going against Golden Guardian's 4th seed.
Yeah, I mean, it is 4th versus 5, right? Which is usually always the closest match that we have. And they were 1 minute apart in favor of Golden Guardians, so Golden Guardians was the higher seed. But again, like just because of the experience that they have in the past, I just thought Golden Guardians would be the favorite. But yeah, just incredibly well performed by Das Gargoyle stream on their first showing here. And of course, this is not this doesn't mean the end of the tournament anyway for Golden Guardians. Even if they lose here, they're gonna go down into the lower bracket. And the winner of this game plays against Echo, which, you know, is very scary. So maybe it's not even that big of a deal anyway, considering that you would just have to play against Echo, right? But of course you want to be in the upper bracket, but having to play against them is just so scary.
Тут чуваки.
All right, and that will be it for Does Gargoyle stream being able to take that 2-1.
Gargoyle stream, like you guys were just saying, having that upset, taking the victory in Mists of Tyrannicide, moving them up into the higher level brackets, and you know, like you guys were mentioning, just some simple mistakes, a little bit of errors, a couple.
Там аффиксы каждый раз разные. Типа на каждый инсту свои аффиксы. Единственное, что сезонный вот этот прайд и все.
Hey, yeah, there you go. Welcome back, guys.
There we go.
Welcome back, Sarah.
Hello, hey Sarah.
I think this is a really great example of how when everything goes global, how close together all the teams are. Guardians is a team that has been, you know, one of the best teams. They won our LAN in Australia 2 years ago. So, I mean.
Какие планы тогда у нас? Можно торгас пойти порофлить? Хант круче часовые, получается так. На ММ Хант он более стабильный. Хотя там Сова, короче, играла без конвока. То есть у нее ковенант был Кири. Кстати говоря. Там специфичная Сова была. Народцем в катакомбах Кири? Серьезно? Я чуть не обратил внимания. Вообще, кстати, там должно быть Типа здесь переигровка. Блин, а там 2-0, да, чуваки заканчивали? Сейчас я ребутну сетку, гляну. Нет, там 1-1 было. Сейчас театр боли, значит, будет. Усиленные мобы. Вулканик. И бульстинг. Бульстинг, я не знаю, что это такое. Вулканик — это типа, когда мобы, ну, эти взрываются под жопой у тебя. Все. Могу вам комментаторов пока поставить. Я отойду на пару минут, себе чику налью. Давайте так, наверное, сделаем. Чё? Я думаю, там третья карта скоро стартанет. Я буквально на минутку отойду.
That great compared to some other classes on these speed runs on these lower keys.
Good to know. So we'll just kind of have to be watching out for a little bit of variety and everything coming up in the future. And we're also going to be taking a quick break before we get into our final series of the day. We're going to have Obey Alliance versus PI Me. So don't go anywhere, guys. The Mythic Dungeon International will be returning just after a few minutes.
Нормальная команда. С этим, типа... Придание сил, типа, на меня. Бесконечно. Так, что пока можно придумать? Как вообще MDI, кстати, чат? Гослинг стримит, ебать. Жестко. Ну, с совета музыка пошла. Образие классов. Ну да, есть такое. Ну, блин, на самом деле, на таких событиях плюс-минус так и должно быть. В том плане, что... Тут же люди стараются все максимизировать, все свои процентики, все свои приколы. Это то же самое, что, типа, я не знаю, пойти International играть и не пикать героев сильных. Фига, там заставочка прикольная, кстати. Оп, кто-то на хуке уехал. Здесь дело не в мете, а дело в том, что всегда будут какие-то сильные персонажи, слабые. Из-за патчей и все. Его на кэрри пикали. Так его на кэрри был очень сильный, если что. Его поэтому и пикали. Нет. Вот как раз, например, Кэрри Висп под твое слово мета не попадает. А под мои слова попадает. Просто всегда кого-то будут бафать, кого-то нерфить. И все. Но не значит, что типа если персонажа бафнули, на нем все начнут играть. В ту же секунду. Он может стать метовым и через месяц, через 2, через 3. Но кто-то уже на нем будет играть.
Love that place. It's a great dungeon. Nice and short one as well. Only 3 bosses, so you can get through in quick fashion.
Маги возможно.
Big fan.
Типа я же вообще не задр Вова. Я Вов начал вот катать осенью. Типа это первый аддон, в который я играю. На актуале.
Yeah, PI me, a very similar team to what we saw from 40K last MDI, except now they have many in. So really strong team, a lot of MDI veterans there. And
similarly on the other side. Yeah,
exactly. And on the other side, we have Obey Alliance, which is an ethical team. They've been picked up by an Org, and now they have Holo In and Chompy moved to DPS. So
первый терноскит, вторая та сторона. Ну и шпили, кстати, третий.
No question. I mean, Skylark, for example, a number of these players participating in the Legion MDI, so
опять тираники, кстати.
Pretty much the very beginning of it, and we're going to be going right back into Mists. But we also get a chance to see a couple of
эта страна прикольная с Бонсамди. Терноскит заебал, что-то постоянно терноскит на этом турике.
Tyrannical in that dungeon is already pretty dangerous because all of those bosses have their own little quirks that make them difficult on their own. And then bolstering is just always difficult. So, yeah, gonna be interested to see what teams have put together for that one. And if we do get to Spires, get ready to look at some angels because that dungeon is bright.
Spiteful too, baby. Very bright and spiteful.
Хочу, чтобы Best of 3 было. Шпили хочу посмотреть. Но шпили, кстати, там усиленные мобы будут. Если бы в шпилях были усиленные боссы, я бы посмотрел, как они последнего босса убивали. Там было бы жопа вообще. Ну хотя они овергир. 229 это овергир на самом деле. Для 18 ключа, я думаю. Они потому что так пачки стирают, просто жесть какая-то.
Dude, that's your friend that does that. One of your Raider Windwalker monks says that every single time Spiteful spawns.
Don't bring my boy Equinox into this, alright? No, he kills all the Spitefuls, alright? He touched death to my Spiteful to keep me alive, okay? Watch out for me.
Какие-то рофы сложные.
Which of these dungeons going into it, Zyro, do you think is going to give these teams the most trouble? We talked about how the other side's got some really nasty ones. Let's talk about bolstering in that one.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about bolstering that dungeon is there's some forced bolstering, right? There's a lot of mobs in there that are lower HP than other mobs in the pool, which is always nasty for bolstering. So they're gonna have to do some pretty decent management of their AoE cleave in order to not stack that too much. I mean, the tyrannical quaking aspect of it is probably more difficult than the actual bolstering aspect of it, because you said bolstering is more of a fortified difficult affix. It's not that bad on tyrannical. And each of the bosses, already mentioned, difficult. Hakar has a pretty tight DPS check to it, which if you don't beat, it gets out of control pretty quickly. Mana Storm does a lot of damage to your tank. And then, of course, member of the Zai clan, my homie, does a lot of damage to everyone in the group if you don't do mechanics properly there. So, yeah, all the bosses in the other side are pretty nasty.
Рассказал там про механики боссов на той стороне, что при тиранике они, в принципе, жесткие. Ну да, там куча всякого дерьма. Не, ну, кстати, наверное, самое сложное это будет в этом. В Урденвельде в той стороне. С телепортами моб. Вот там будет геморрой. Хакар легкий, в принципе. У них шмот пиздец, конечно, на самом деле. Вот у них будет хотя бы 215 шмот. Было бы в разы жестче. У них, грубо говоря, 230 шмотки, охуеть. Такой шмот падает с Динатрия, с мифика. То есть у них фулл гир с Динатрия, с мифика, грубо говоря. Они чисто в 18 ключи месть. Конечно, там можно пулить все, что хочешь.
You can see PI opting for a slightly slower strategy of paralyzing the inspiring mob just outside of the pool, whereas Obey Alliance going bigger here. They are pulling that mob into the rest of this pack. Means they won't be able to do any interrupts to any other mobs, but they've decided they can get through it as actually we have quite a bit of difference here in composition between these teams with the Balance Druid and the Unholy Death Knight on the side of Obey Alliance. The Unholy Death Knight doing quite a bit of damage to this pool, whereas on the side of PI there's the Windwalker Monk and the Marksmanship Hunter instead.
ДК, Сова, Маг, ДЦ, ну и ДХ, понятно. Здесь еще ДЦ, ДХ, Монах, Firemark и Мемхант.
And you know, if it's done properly, it'll probably give them about a minute to a minute and a half advantage. So I like the idea from them, but like we saw from Golden Guardians, it didn't really work out for them. So we're gonna have to see some play from Obey Alliance.
Где Сурфхан? Не понял.
PIME already onto the double Bowbreaker pull. Looks like they're just cruising through the dungeon so far.
Yeah,
показали бы, как играть.
Just prior to this pull. Or maybe they're going to go and back pull into it. Yes, that is going to be the operation here. So
там, кстати, Ферал, по-моему, друид.
That they pulled first, those Bowbreakers have more health than the others as well. So as long as they can avoid the Soul Cleaver healing too much when it buffs itself and swings, every auto attack will leech health back onto it. This should be a fairly efficient way to do this pull. They have that inspiring mob crowd controlled. They'll be spawning Pride, and we'll see what sequence they decide to do. The Prideful mob, the boss, and the inspiring mob. Presumably you want to combine those in some way, but you don't want to be.
Слушайте, что там реально походу Ферал друид.
Similar here as well, where they pulled the last inspiring mob up into the double Bowbreakers as well, just so they didn't have to worry about interrupts on the.
Или мне так кажется так.
By just killing 3 of the mobs without the inspiring mobs, and it actually has.
Не, там что-то сова отстреливается походу Старфолом. Ну ладно. Блин, я уже думал, что-то интересное будет.
Yeah, looks like PIME is going to be melding the Pride, so they've decided, all right, look, we aren't going to be one-phasing this boss, right? We're just going to do this in 2 clean phases, and we're going to get the benefit of not killing a Prideful mob, which does save quite a bit of time if you don't end up needing or using its buff. So perhaps the burst in their comp is going to allow them to make that, you know,
Эти лупят моба.
I mean, it definitely should, and I haven't quite paid attention to the hunter here as well. But if he's running that carry,
не, если прям перед боссом, мне кажется,
it looks like their hunter is actually playing
этого челика надо убивать.
So yeah, it's pretty much all going to come down to whether or not
Красного.
the Alliance can actually get that full-on one phase here. That'll be very indicative of how they're going to be able to compete in this dungeon.
I gotta say, I've been loving watching the different covenants.
Ну, кстати, да, это первый челик, который не на эльфе играет.
You know, this is the second Hunter Covenant we've seen. We've seen different specs for Death Knight, for Vengeance Demon Hunter, for Discipline Priest. All those different specs have had different covenants played. Even the Moonkin, basically every single spec so far, except for the Fire Mage, which has pretty consistently been Night Fae for that shifting power. So strong for that spec, especially in a speedrunning setting like this. And the Windwalker Monks for the Weapons of Order, massive burst damage that Kyrian offers. But other than that, we've been seeing so.
Ну, кстати, думаю, рад будет. Его должны на фаермаке теперь в каждый этот инст брать. Тупо у каждого челика есть фаермак в сетапе.
Here comes the burst phase for Obey Alliance here. Very important that they can get this down. They have both the CA and the Convoke the Spirits coming from the.
Тупо любой сетап, 2 челика всегда есть. Демон Хантер и фаермак.
The full-on one phase, 3% left after the damage amp.
Жесть какая. Это ДК, это ДК, да. Это рыцарь смерти, блять. Ой, как хотели.
But Obey Alliance used that Pride instead with all their cooldowns, every single thing you could possibly imagine. The burstiest comp you could come up with, perhaps. Well, a very bursty comp, particularly on single target with the Moonkin.
На этом боссе там такой сплэш ДК выдает, просто ёбнешься с армией мертвых.
Well, if PIME is able to get the boss down in the second phase, it shouldn't be too big of a time loss for them. And with it being below 10%, they'll easily be able to burn Ingram Malak without having to deal with the tree once again. But still, the time saved from being able to one phase that boss can't be mentioned enough. They're already done with the first pack here, when PIME hasn't even gotten through the first mist to get to the first pack.
Yeah, they're able to get through that first door in the maze. A little tip for those who don't know, the first door you don't even have to do the little puzzle for. It'll just always be whichever one Mistcaller runs through at the start of that event. So if you're paying attention, you can just know what it's going to be, and then not even have to worry about solving that first puzzle. Although, of course, it's good practice to learn how to do that puzzle on one of the earlier moments where it's a little bit less punishing if you do mess it up.
Right, for sure. Actually, like you mentioned, you can get through the first 2 doors, so people need to pay attention to where that Dreamweaver is going. So, second pack now going down for Obey Alliance here, and you can see, again, the power of the Mage having Combust available for pretty much every single pull. It's why we're seeing it in pretty much every team comp. And like we mentioned earlier, that shifting power, making sure you can get your Combust cooldown down to about 1 minute, just makes them so useful in general for everything. And the PI helps with that as well. Hence the name PI me over on the side of Dr. J's team, because I'm pretty sure Dr. J is going to be the one getting those PIs.
Yes, the power infusion, the haste from that, it usually doesn't reduce the cooldown of your combustion that much, right? Because you're not throwing off too many fireballs during a usual AoE combust, right? But it's still not bad, and if you do use it, you know, it can help set up the combust being on that 1 minute timer, right? Being on the 1 minute timer is much better than being on a slightly longer timer, so you can line every single PI up with the combust, ideally.
Now, something that can be
Прайд
done
приехал.
for most teams,
Спасибо
we're
за
not
фол.
really seeing it in these miss runs yet, or we haven't seen it yet today.
Не, ну
But
эти чуваки
you can
очень
only go
жестко
through these
идут. Они
tools
так
very
первого
quickly.
босса
That- and
стерли.
there is a brief
Кошмар.
time period in between a pack dies and the pride spawns that you can actually go
Там
through
какое-то
the
сумасшедшее
misses
количество
and
урона
perform the
въехало.
next pack if you have the cooldowns. They didn't opt to go for it here, and I think they might have been able to, since you can see they have the Celestial Alignment and likely the Convoke up from their Druid here, who has just decided to pop it to deal with the Prideful.
Там бурстанул
It looks like
ДК,
they're just gonna go ahead and deal
бурстанул
with it that way, and then they have
маг.
combust available for the next pull, so just
И
good
друид
cooldown
конвок
allocation.
нажал, походу.
I feel like ideally you'd be able to
А
take
нет,
that
друид.
down with this pack if you can get the out of
Кирия,
combat mist.
кстати.
You don't even need to do it out of, like, you could actually meld the pride. I think we've seen that
Oh, true.
actually in early
yeah,
А
you
нет,
can do
это не Кирия, это ночной народец, да?
pull the pride in as well if you feel like the pack is going to be easy, and then you get the pride buff for whatever comes next. As you can see, wow, this maze is being solved very, very effectively by.
Что-то по значкам я не могу понять по этим.
Oh yeah, and then everyone's favorite trash mob in this
Я не
dungeon,
помню, кто
Gorge
как
Golem,
выглядит.
big old frog that hops around and slows your tank by 1,000,000%. It's a good old mob. All you gotta do is dodge the leaps, and it's pretty easy.
Да,
Just a
походу это
big chunk of HP to get through, and this is usually the kind of mob
ночной
where
народ, а
having
эти
a
два
Convoke
вентира.
is really
Ой,
useful,
два
like
вентира, блин,
especially in
говорю.
live
Два
push keys, but
бастионовца.
obviously that was just used on the Prideful, so they're just gonna have to slowly get through this. Looks like the DK committed his cooldowns to this one.
ДК
Yeah, this
вместе
DK is
с...
playing Venthyr as well, so not the Necrolord
That's
that DK is generally playing the live servers. Instead playing Venthyr, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Да,
We've
ДК
actually seen
вентир,
both
ДХ, я про ДХ.
over the course of this tournament so far today.
ДХ с хилом,
Same
они
play the
эти...
Necrolord as well.
Да,
Venthyr
бастионовцы.
giving them that swarming mist, which is a pretty potent. You can see
У них вот эти значки, бастионы и феи, я их все время путаю.
AoE cooldown.
For sure, and then once again, I mean, you can just see that the cooldown allocation is pretty much perfect.
Ну, маг-то фея. Я видел уже анимацию феи, значит.
Then you usually have, you know, the DK
У этого чувака конвок на друиде.
their ability just for another pull. And then any sort of single target burst, you always have your cooldowns from your Druid, your Convoke, and your Celestial Alignment available for. Although they aren't available this time, so this Prideful might last quite a bit.
Блин, там реально же, там типа у босса 200% увеличения урона. Плюс конвок нажался друида, нажался проказ ДК, нажался комбуст мага. Там на тиранике на 18 ключе босс сдох фуловый почти, у него осталось где-то 5% хп. Кошмар. То есть, а здесь чуваки еще 2 фазы добивали. Какое сумасшедшее количество времени экономится просто. Блин, жесть там, конечно, ДК кайфует. На него придание сил накидывается и поехал. Сейчас так крошить. Чик-чик-чик-чик-чик. Как суши-мастер. В соло таргет 7000.
A brutal spot to be in. It looks like just saving that combustion for the first add target here, if I had to guess. As they quickly identify which one the correct target will be.
Они, кстати, тут тоже скипать будут. Типа, смотрите, ни сова, ни маг не прожимаются. И они, типа, комбурст вместе с конвоком оставят, когда, типа, босс попытается на 10% перейти. Еще раз на угадайку. Они его сотрут нахер.
Does seem like it. I mean, it would definitely be worthwhile. It'd be worth saving cooldowns to do that. But it looks like the Convoke is going to be fired off right now, so I don't think that is going to be the plan here.
Не, что-то сова не выдержала.
Meanwhile, PI also doing very well here. Also on Mistcaller, they have a little bit more mob count. Although it's worth noting that the mob count is sometimes a little bit.
Сова не выдержала, начала кидаться костами.
Sometimes the Tiernan villagers aren't correctly giving the 2.5% count that they should be when they're dying. So we're tracking that
А сколько конвок у друида, кажется, примерно кто-то шарит? Есть опытные совы в чате?
One of the things you'll notice as well about this boss is that neither team is really ever worrying about dealing with the illusionary Vulpine that fixates players.
Вот сейчас бы камбурст плюс конвок. Можно было бы скипнуть фазу. Процентов 20 хп бы выбили легко.
Yeah, that is definitely a much easier thing to deal with, particularly if your group is full of melee. Because normally, if your group is full of melee,
ладно, они все равно очень много выигрывают.
You can't just have one person kite it, because that person would be losing damage if they were melee. It also does a big AoE freeze if it does successfully connect with its target, and that can, I mean, it can be a group wiping thing if that does happen. So,
там у людей еще 2 фазы опять на боссе. И тупо 2 фазы выигрывают теперь из-за первого босса все время. Это очень много.
Slow fall this. That's something that we've seen other teams do to get past this first 3-pack. There's a little bit of an invisible wall that you can slow fall against if you decide to go that way. Looks like that's not going to be the plan here for Obey Alliance. They are going to just jump down and they will be either pulling or skipping this pack through other means.
Yeah, likely just prisoning from Skylark there. There it is, comes out now, and they're set up for this massive pull that we see a lot of teams do, even on live servers where you pull both that left and right pack together, let it all come together in the middle, and then your mage just kind of shoots to the moon.
Yeah, this pull, very scary if it lives a long time, but they have the tools available to make sure it doesn't with the combustion, and especially with the Death Knight as well, in Swarming Mist, with Dark Transformation up, that can also be extremely effective at killing those higher health ones towards the end of the pull, which this pack, not all the mobs in this pack have the same amount of health. There will be some that survive quite a bit longer than the others.
This pull definitely taking a little longer to round up than normal, but I think they actually ended up pulling
Сколько
that
они
third pack at the back.
привели?
So with everything now stacked together, you can see the DK and the mage will be shooting up pretty quickly here. Looks like the DK got most of the pie on the small adds, but the fire mage damage coming in hot later on, no pun intended. And I mean, you can already see
ДК с магом заливает по 20 000, поехали.
cooldown reduction from shifting power. It's kind of nutty what that class can do with uncapped AoE.
Yeah, the power infusion as well, just so strong in a setting like this, as the appropriately named PI me, power infusion.
Интересно, таланты было посмотреть на эту инсту ДК. По идее, нужно убивать боссов. Ну хотя да, у него не будут таланты на зачистку трэша. Что-то так сейчас подумал. Здесь нигде нет смысла. АОЕ таланты брать.
I think this one, though, that'll allow them to pull another 2-pack in combination, which would be quite, I mean, almost all the rest of the count they need.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised here as well to see what we saw from Golden Guardians, where they actually pull these next 2 packs into the boss with Lust, which they have available. And it looks like they have, well, they don't have their cooldowns on their Moonkin and their DK up, but I mean, you kind of don't need those when you have a Fire Mage in your group. You have Pride, you have Combust, you have Lust, that's all you need. And we'll see if Skylark plans on going forward. Looks like he is. He's going straight into the boss room, so here you go. Double pack with the boss, and with really only a Mage Combust to do damage with. Gonna be a little scary for them for sure.
Here it is, Skylark getting pummeled. Fell Devastation, though, will turn him into a demon for 6 seconds.
Тут опять началось.
He will be very hard to
Пак
kill.
плюс босс.
We need to make sure that these mobs die, ideally before he does. Looks like Last Resort is still available, though, so that he's actually a lot safer than his health bar looks here. Because if he ever would die, he instead turns into a demon for another 15 seconds, and that makes him, again, extremely...
Блин, какой же кошмарный дэмэдж у них. Но это из-за шмоток. Вов просто игра шмоток, конечно. Там пиздец какой-то, 229 шмот. Мне кажется, они после MDI придут, они на своих персонажах не смогут сесть поиграть, потому что ты здесь идеальные шмотки получаешь. Ты на full card бланш у тебя. А потом ты приходишь на своего чара, у которого за 7 недель не упала какая-нибудь шмотка, важная для тебя. Сидишь такой, кайф.
This is going to be very, very close. Tredova's still at 50%. That boss's health bar barely moving for Obey Alliance here. Whereas for Piami, if they can take care of all this trash under Tradova, they will potentially be done with their trash count and not need to do an extra pull after the dungeon is over, which Obey Alliance certainly will have to do. So this dungeon, the two teams have come about it at a different way, but they're going to reach their destinations at right around the same time. This is going to be a very, very close finish.
Ну, кстати, да, вот это... То, что они красиво первого босса убили и решило все. По ХП даже сейчас видно это. Там 80%, здесь 25%.
That means you have to deal with the Prideful during the boss, so I don't think it's gonna proc for them here. They'll probably get to 99% and they'll proc it when the boss is about to go down, right?
Well, I think that they are at 98%, but they have killed a Tiernan villager that's worth 2.6%, which I think means that they are actually.
Ой, а там чуваки реально мобов притащили. Они бьют босса и мобов еще таскают. Там уже 98%. То есть, в принципе, этим-то еще мобов добивать, а эти нет. Ну, хотя ладно, там 60% хп еще, это нереально будет успеть. Да, то есть здесь умер босс. И здесь просто пачка мобов.
And that's really it. Although the Unholy DK and Boom can do pump out enough AoE damage to do enough to help out.
I think it's 95% is the number we're looking for if they've killed 2 Tiernan villagers. So this pull versus the boss's health, I believe, is what we are looking for to determine who is going to win this game between these two.
Блин, ну реально близко, там 43%.
Okay, yeah, there's difficulty going on here.
You can see Igloo's for Piami over there. Looks like he just went down and had to get paralyzed.
Yeah.
But that's going to be the end of the dungeon here. Obey Alliance getting to 100% of the trash, a little more than they needed, but taking a pretty quick, pretty impressive run, especially comparing the time.
That
we saw that was about 3 minutes faster than we saw from the other two teams that ran mists earlier today.
Yeah, Obey Alliance coming out and being extremely impressive there with their Misted Tyrann.
Чисто странно будет.
Game number 1 and like I said, pretty decisive faction. Although we did see Piami keeping it very close. It's just been kind of the continuing trend.
Сейчас перерыв, наверное, долго будет. Можно успеть Таргаст один этаж пробежаться. Попробовать. Как мне Таргаст? Там типа все равно сейчас будет перерыв. И до Other Side пойдем смотреть уже. Сейчас закрыли это, кстати, в Таргасте. Чертоги Скольда. Это что вообще такое? Блин, надеюсь, там перерыв быстро будет. Но у них, кстати, остается... То есть сейчас сыграно 4 матча. Наверное, будет еще сегодня. Какая собака? Которая из инвиза, типа, приходит. Когда ты не в тимфайте. Или какая собака? Я понял, Мортригар. Так Мортригар это вообще задница. Мортригар это еще хуже. Лучше к собаке пойду. Наверное, сегодня еще озера будут. А завтра сыграется все, кроме 2 финалов. Наверное, так будет. Типа сегодня 6 матчей, завтра получится 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 тоже. И потом 2. Представляет противника. Коварные, души. Талант не поменял. Мне вот этот нужен вместо молотка. Таргас, чтоб хиляться. Ну ладно. Смелые, коварные души. Можно, кстати, даже будет, например, сейчас пройти первый-второй этаж, на третьем встать авк. Если там перерыв закончится. После авк. Ну, типа после карты. 4-5 торгас пройти. Будет нормалек. Бесконечно. На тебя идет охота. Берегись. Угу, пошли. Зачем я этого чего выпустил, простите? Хотя он изёвый что-то. А, ну хотя у меня шмот 190, да, для торгаста это уже нормально. Сюда. Бесконечно. Как они нам бесконечно везет. Мне интересно, они будут вторую легендарку делать или нет? Есть смысл мне на ДК мучиться и пыль все копить? Или сделать наварию и залить? Же мне пизда. Ну, типа все ориентируются на то, как было, ну, точнее большинство ориентируется сейчас на то, как было в этом, в Легионе. Типа, что сначала была одна легендарка, а потом под середину аддона сделали, что можно две таскать одновременно. Но непонятно, что в голове у Близов и какой у них план вообще. Конечно, по-хорошему, типа, все равно нужно пыли копить, потому что сейчас, типа, максимально... Блин, хотел показать. Типа, у меня тушка на ДК 235, это максимально сейчас 4 уровня легендарка. Но по факту-то, типа, когда выйдут новые рейды и данжи, это левел опять поднимется. О, там уже идет. Нифига себе, быстро стартанули.
Those rewards can really compound if you end up skipping some blood barriers. And I think that's what Obey Alliance is up to here. As we see large port coming out from
Сука, сраный торгаст. У меня моб напал, я не могу экран показать.
use that Night Fade urn on the side in order to stun everything.
That's exactly what's happened, yeah.
And it looks like they're able to burn everything down before having to worry about any of those major heal casts from Caprice and the Hexers. So, pretty cool strategy coming out from PI. I mean, it's kind of the thing that Dr. J and his team have been known for.
Ну алло,
It's
игра.
kind of crazy
Хватит.
pulls. And look how it's paying off for them. First Pride already spawned. Mini has gone down, but they'll be able to battle res him. It's a little unfortunate that they have to commit that early on in the dungeon, though.
Yeah, they need actually somebody to go and successfully cast that battle res. It's going to be difficult to do, though, in the middle of this prideful combat that they are in. And actually, they already used a battle res as well, so they don't even have one available here for Mini. No easy way to drop combat, no way for Mini to easily skip here, it doesn't look like. Although maybe he could have released right when he died and gotten back in time. Looks like at this point they are committed.
Батарис потратили уже.
Rentari goes down on the side of Piami as well.
It looks like the play for them is that Rentari pulled the Prideful as far away as he possibly could, while the rest of the team got a Shadow Meld off and tried to get a res onto Mini.
Что-то челики начали умирать как мухи.
That looks like it's what the play is, and there goes the mass res. So it looks like it's pulled off. It's barely pulled off for them. They're in the boss room. They just want to have that prideful buff to deal with the boss.
Чё у них по сетапу ДК тоже взяли?
So we thought it was a good pull for them that almost worked out very well, but it turns out that the way that ended up going at the end, it might end up costing them. Might still be better than what Obey Alliance did, though. Obey Alliance took 2 pulls to do this corridor compared to the 3. They are still working on that manifestation of pride, but they will be rewarded with a prideful buff going into Hakar. Let's see if they're able to use that to claw back some of that time that they
Да,
lost.
кстати, сетапы вообще почти не меняются. Один персонаж максимум меняется. Я думаю, ну типа в целом интересно посмотреть, но я думаю, что мы завтра не будем ничего смотреть подобное. Потому что ничего не изменится, там может где-то чуваки чуть сильнее будут и все. А вот финал можно посмотреть будет 24 числа уже, 2 финальчика. Гузера, Винора. Финал всегда интересно. Потому что типа до финала обычно всегда 1-2 сильных команды доходят.
On the small screen. Meanwhile, on the big screen, Lust popped directly on pull here. Obey Alliance has all their cooldowns basically available. Chompy gonna save a little bit, but should still be able to get them during the Bloodlust time here. Does need to get away from the boss a little bit. They have to handle this quaking as well, but you can see they have been nuking Hakar here. Hakar already down to 50% for them. On the side of Piami, though, it is still dramatically lower at 20%. And it is dying quickly. Hopefully they're able to avoid the next blood barrier cast.
Блин, как же Хакару больно.
Increasingly large as this fight goes on.
Это тираник Кенни его херачит, кстати.
One of those ads that's still up, or one of the ones that's reanimated, it gets very, very, very large. As you can see here on the side of Obey Alliance, that cast has just gone out, and Hakar is quite healthy at this 30%. Okay, they're able to break through the shield nicely, though. Getting it to 30% before the blood barrier cast is actually pretty relevant. It enables the searing touch from Shape if he's running that, which lets him do a little bit more damage and be a little bit more mobile in the execute phase.
9.6, 8.5, 8.
Ooh, this is going to be close here. He's at 100 energy here. If he gets this blood barrier off, he does get it off. They're going to have to burn through that blood barrier.
3% хп разлил мочу.
And you can see they even tried to mitigate it by using some immunities. It makes the barrier
неприятно для чуваков.
Because the way the spell works, but still they're going to have to burn through all of the shield on the players they hit, plus all of the Sons of Hakar that are available, and it just costs them like 20 or so seconds. That being said, PIME does still have to skip past all of this trash that they did not kill, and they will not have their Shadow Melds available for anything that they might want to do in the Mana Storm's Mechagon area, whereas Obey Alliance will. So we're going to have to see how that works out for them coming up.
Looks like PIME is actually going to now be pulling the pack that they previously skipped to facilitate better Lust timing. Mobs got shackled and I think imprisoned, or not imprisoned, but paralyzed, and then got pulled in. So I'm not sure what the idea was there. Maybe that was to use as a
заднем фоне
those raptors. When they got pulled, something got sent flying by the frontal as well there, but it looks like it was just a pet, so not a big deal. Some of the Army of the Dead minions, perhaps. As PIME, you can see Rentari is under a lot of pressure.
Это мой народ Мизава. Никогда я их не предам.
Does already have cheat death through Last Resort procced, so that's not available for him. Meanwhile, on the side of Obey Alliance, the same pull is coming out. Skylark in a lot of a healthier position with that cheat death still available, choosing to kite a little bit more early.
Когда стримишь на Твиче ради двух своих друзей, и тебе говорят, что устройся уже на работу, блять. Это мой народ Мизао, никогда я их не предам. Сука.
And you can see the urn being opened by Dr. J, and that is going to stun for 10 seconds the Enraged Spirit, which is a tremendous difficulty decrease of a very hard mob that's only available if you do have a member of the Night Fae Covenant in your group.
And it's really important.
Я хочу уже третьего босса посмотреть.
If you stun the rage before a tick of that rage damage goes off, it'll just recast it. So you need to make sure that it gets stunned only after your group takes at least 1 tick of damage. I think they took 2 ticks of damage there, which, you know, you'll take that every time.
Ну и поехали с пачкой мобов тогда.
Execution there. But there's a little bit more nuance to that click than it looks.
Dr. J is going to invis skip here rather than doing a meld skip because their meld was actually still on cooldown at the time across the group for PIME, and they will now be using a meld skip, presumably. I imagine that the way this dungeon is oriented, they are going to try and get most of their count from that Ardenweld wing, where everything is kind of, you could potentially pull it all at the same time. Whereas in this area, besides this pull, there's a lot of mobs that are not too pleasant to pull at the same time as each other, and you'd maybe rather skip.
Вообще стримить, конечно, супер кайф. Рофлишь, сидишь, кайфуешь. Занимаешься чем, грубо говоря, захочешь. Единственное, конечно, чтобы это именно было работой, нужно прям... Тут даже дело не в том, что я хотел сначала сказать вкладываться, но вкладываться ты очень сильно можешь. Но типа доход это тебе может не начать приносить сразу. Грубо говоря. Как минимум.
They are now going to run through with their invis pots. They need to be careful to not go too far forward yet, though, because that will aggro these oils. And so they now pull those in with the lubricator.
И под инвизом пробежали одного чела, который крутится, и одного смазчика. Одного смазчика хуярит и слизь.
Ideally, with the mage cooldown here, no damage should be going off for them, and you can see pretty much perfect execution there. Nobody gets hit by any of those essential oils, and the shadow melds still aren't off cooldown. Oh no, they are off cooldown for PIME, so they could opt to skip this prideful if they wanted to, but it's very unsurprising that they're.
Я думаю, озера, кстати, не будем себе смотреть тоже. Что-то спать уже охота. Можно завтра побольше постримить, просто что-нибудь интересную игрушку какую-нибудь найти. А вечерком в недра собраться, например, бати попробовать.
They're a little bit behind in terms of dungeon progression right now, so it's kind of going to be a question of whether the pulls that PIME does later to make up that count will be more or less time efficient than what Obey Alliance did. I kind of like PIME's position, though, in the dungeon so far. I think that their pathing has been very smart, and even with a pretty big mishap of a death leading into a minute-long pseudo-wipe situation, they've ended up really being impressively fast through here.
Yep, for sure. And I mean, skipping all those lubricators is pretty. I mean, it makes the most sense out of anything in the dungeon to skip, because if you do miss those casts, it's a big DPS loss. People in your group just have a random chance to miss their spells and abilities for a while. So definitely don't want to take any chance there, because that can get out of control quickly. Both teams opting for that, and Millhouse Mana Storm already getting low for PIME.
Yeah, this is a cool boss because both bosses have casts that they can do while they are inactive that allow you to crowd control the active boss, right? You can see here this little laser beam. If you line that up such that it overlaps with Maleficent Mana Storm, it'll stun her. And then, or with Millhouse Mana Storm rather, it'll stun him. And then when Maleficent is down, Millhouse will cast Shadow Fury if he's still alive, and that can be used to stun her. Particularly helpful against her chicken robot rain thing cast that otherwise can do quite a lot of damage and really close a lot of the room off to your group.
Yep, for sure. And you got to remember as well that this section of the boss, this Maleficent Mana Storm phase, is a tank buster. This is a lot of damage to your tank, especially if you let it stack up too much. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Rentari go ahead and kiting around the room once that bleed debuff gets high enough. I think he already committed his carrion pot to to resetting it, but or maybe he's just got some lucky dodges as well. But if that debuff gets too high, you can see some.
Кстати, в тот раз кто-то говорил как раз, если уводить ее сюда, то в принципе.
Bleed stacks are really, really nasty. Here it is though. The Shadow Fury goes on Dr. J. It's going to stun him, but it's also going to stun Maleficent. Send her back up to the Raptors.
Типа бомбы только в одну сторону выходят.
And then finishing off Maleficent. Very, very cleanly executed, I'd say, so far by PI. Most of these mechanics have been landing exactly as intended, as they need to soak these power-infusing crystals before they actually reach the boss. Similar to Galvazed back in Temple of Centralis last expansion. Want to make sure that those lines do not make it to the boss.
Ой, там щел сдох.
In order to avoid it powering up too much, as Mini unfortunately goes down for PI me.
Дружище, как ты на ДК-то сдох?
I completely missed that. Really unfortunate. That being said, the boss is pretty much already dead, so they might not need to commit the battle res. This next Maleficent phase might take quite a while.
Что-то вообще килька, там 54%, на 44, здесь еще и сдох чувак.
So if things go
походу 2-0.
here, they might actually have to deal with an aerial rocket chicken barrage with no stun, but hopefully they can get the boss down before that. Dr. J does have the combust available, but he's not committing it because I think they'll be able to get it down before that happens.
Yeah, the boss actually ends at 10% as well. You don't actually kill this boss, so because of that, they're actually fairly close to this one being done. I don't think they're in too much danger, but it was certainly close. If Mini had died a little bit earlier, they might have been in this fight for a lot longer. They are able to escape, though. As Maleficent reaches 10%, they will be drawing back the mojo, so they can empower Bwansamdi with it later.
Ooh, Dr. J with a little time skip there, making sure he was on top of the hole before getting the mojo drawn. Yep, little time save. If everyone in the group did that, you know, look at maybe a 5 to 10 second time save. Pretty
True love.
A little bit risky on a quaking week, though. Of course, if you get the quaking time, they were a little bit off the timer being bad, but potentially you can get a lot of
конечно, очень харизматичный персонаж, кайфовый.
If you are all stacked on top of each other.
Mini was not AFK there, by the way, chat. He was waiting for one of his teams to come outside and get on the staircase to unlock the next checkpoint, so that when he released, he came right outside instead of respawning at the boss. So a little bit of a time save for him there as well, and they're able to get right into this next pack that they skipped earlier on with the combust available, just burning it down quickly.
Dr. J zoned off of his first rune of power as a result of those two warlords both targeting near the area. That is unfortunate for him. He's still doing respectable 17k DPS, though. Nothing too shabby there for the Fire Mage. Of course, wow, the damage is very high across the entire team of PI. Look at the damage, not just of their other DPS players, but of Rentari on that Kyrian Demon Hunter with those double potency conduits, the Echoing Decree and the Growing Inferno. Just
мне, кстати, Фаермак вообще не понравился.
For a spec that is already quite high damage.
Типа вот у всех в паке есть один Фаермак обязательно, и он ебурит. А мне прям вообще персонаж чуть не зашел.
And there you go, it goes down just now, and they're going to go instantly into this rage, which again, the combust is available for.
Yeah, this time they don't have a Night Fae Urn available to stun its Rage Cast, so they are going to just have to live through it, unless they decide to pull this all the way up onto the next platform where there is one such thing. Alter Time is going to be used by Dr. J. Alter's at about 90% health. Alter Time is a very potent defensive option for mages this expansion. Needs to be used carefully, right? You need to make sure that you're not, you know, pressing it like you would a normal defensive when you start taking damage. You need to press it before you start taking too much damage. And that little shift in thought process is actually very difficult to internalize.
Типа процентом сравнялись, чуваки.
Your whole health bar potentially.
Yeah, and I mean, a really good option that a lot of players just forget about using sometimes is if you're at like 60%, you're not sure if you want to pop that alter time, just health potion and then instantly alter time to give yourself a full health alter time. It can save your life in so many situations. Mage this expansion is actually just one of the most disgusting classes. In addition to still doing insane damage, they just got 2 insane defensive cooldowns. Not only do they have alter time, which we've already talked about being OP, but mirror images is a 20-second damage reduction, which can last for up to 40 seconds as long as your mirror images are still alive. I don't know why they decided to give Mage 2 ridiculous.
Самая сложная часть инсты.
There you go.
Yeah, the Mage, particularly in this setting as well, it shines so much with just the way that combustion operates. How bursty it is in a setting like this. It's really all about that burst damage. And the fact that it scales up fantastically into AoE as long as you're frame breaking, which you are as of right now.
Было бы мемно, если кто-то еще на ушках отъехал.
Actually, yeah, these two teams are neck and neck here on the timer. We have both teams making their way into the Ardenworld ring. with almost the exact same count. So everything has really evened out over the last few minutes as teams have kind of been killing trash packs in slightly different orders. Things have been going a little bit wrong in a couple of spots, but for the most part, the plan has been working for both these teams. And Obey Alliance are actually now slightly ahead on the timer. Not by a huge amount, though.
I would venture to say very far ahead, especially since they're already dealing with their first trash pack. And you got to remember, they have that 4-death advantage. PIME had some issues earlier on in the dungeon, so the 20-second extra time on the board for them. And yeah, they're already almost an entire trash pack ahead. So I would say that Obey Alliance has somehow taken the lead here, even after being behind on the Mana Storm Twins. I mean, they just came out of nowhere, I feel like, here.
Well, they had already killed that trash pack at the bottom of the stairs, so they were able to recoup that time. That was when we saw that in their dungeon progression. And yeah, the Mana Storms was a tough fight for PIME because Mini was dead for the last 30% of it. And that certainly is costly for a team's timer.
Ну, кстати, вот типа у них почти у всех одинаковые сетапы по персонажам, которые ходят. Но зато ты смотришь маршруты. Маршруты на самом деле очень сильно отличаются. Где-то есть, да, какие-то сходства? Плюс-минус дефолтные, чтобы там прайд вылез, еще что-то такое. На процентах. Но в целом там чуваки скипнули мобов, эти нет, например. Вот эти вообще дракона бьют. Все бывает дракона, которого никто никогда не трогает.
Yes, their Death Knights are also playing different covenants. So even though we see the same specs on these teams, we actually have only 60% of the same covenants and 40% divergence.
Yeah, and that Night Fae Urn has still not been used. They're going to use it at some point. There's no major reason not to. But I'd imagine they're going to do it with the Matriarch pull down below right afterwards. I mean, it just wouldn't make sense not to use it. It's a free 8-second stun, keeping everything in your mage's flame patch during combust, making sure that everything's in your DK's D&D. It makes the pulls so much easier, so we'll probably see that being used to clear up pretty much the rest of their trash percentage here pretty soon.
Yeah, first they're going to make sure they get this pride buff, and the combination of a pride buff and a Night Fae Urn can be used to make a massive
Ну, кстати, им не хватит, по-моему. Им нужно сейчас что-то еще добирать сзади. Какой-то трэш. Потому что там очень мало паков мобов ниже, перед боссом. Им нужно сейчас, походу, каких-то цапель патрульных добирать идти сзади. Либо они в низинке что-то придумывать будут.
Really multiplies your damage to the next level and makes it possible to get a really huge pull done successfully.
And there's the prideful buff that'll be on them for the next minute. Let's see what
ну да, вот развернулись, пойдут сейчас цапели ловить.
I'm excited for this because they can probably pull this entire room. There's one half of it, and if I'm not mistaken, Skylark will probably be going and pulling the rest of those plus the Matriarch in the corner. And well, maybe not the Matriarch actually, because it's gonna have more HP and it'll be an issue for bolstering. It looks like they have everything but the Matriarch, and they're pulling it into a Ring of Frost so they get perfect timing on the stun here too. Man, watch this trash back.
Yeah, these mobs are all
красиво было. Сначала морозка их, маг.
And kill all of them right around the same time, except for Chompy, who can't deal damage to the 6th target. But other than that, they are killing all of these very quickly, as Chompy is unfortunately 4th place in the damage meters there for Obey Alliance. Not to worry though, one of them a little bit high on health, but they are doing a great job here of just melting. What was that? 12% trash in a single pull.
Было бы прикольно, кстати, как они убивали бы паки с этим суффиксом. Пытаюсь вспомнить, как он называется. Но суть в том, что типа бафаются мобы. То есть ты, например, одного моба убиваешь, он бафает 2 других. И так далее. То есть там, ты когда убиваешь весь трэш, типа собираешь там пак, например, 10 мобов, то последняя цапля, она будет здоровая, такая сильная, потому что ее перебафают все, кто до этого умерли. Вот это было бы жестко, кстати. Но этого аффикса, наверное, не будет. Это, наверное, самый мемный и самый жесткий аффикс, который есть. Там потому что здоровый такой олень будет, который убивает тебя стычки. Или цапля такая же. А тут чуваки уже босса бьют. Но они трэш не добили.
In order to prevent taking damage from that big explosion. Also perhaps being used to manage the arcane lightning debuff. Little known debuff on this fight, particularly if you don't do particularly high keys, but as you start getting to the keys in this 18 level, the arcane lightning does huge amounts of damage. That's why the anti-magic
94% убивает третьего босса. Там чуваки добивают 8% и будут босса сейчас бить.
Jumping between the players. And you really want to make sure you're managing it. You can see Skylark here is having it, and then he's dropping it off on alternating between the two melee players and stacking up a bunch of stacks of that debuff on himself that increase the damage it does. But as a tank, you can really survive quite high stacks. You just want to make sure you're not zapping the same
Я таких не знаю, к сожалению. Первый аддончик, который я играю. Но это в бафа, походу, был.
But sometimes you need to just, you know, get a fourth player, and so it's something that you kind of
Если про жару.
And like you mentioned, there are some issues whenever the explosive contrivances goes off, and you really need to make sure that the
Или
next player
где-то
is
еще
as
раньше.
close to you as possible. So yeah, just you're seeing the world marker spam just to make sure everyone knows exactly where they need to be for these AoE casts from the boss when they go up in the air, like right now.
Yeah, you can see we have, what is this? There are only 8 total world markers available. It looks like 6 of them are down here for Obey Alliance.
Блин, они там еще и
where they
прайд
decide to use
бьют.
their other 2 world markers. Now a very limited resource for them.
Yeah, for sure. A little bit of a different strategy coming out from PIME as well. We already talked about this, but they ended up dealing with that final pride, and they have it available right now while they're on the dealer himself. The Bloodlust is also pop, so they'll be getting through this boss pretty quickly, but, I mean, they pretty much are an entire boss behind now, even though they already dealt...
Здесь, конечно, на самом деле босс на коленке убит еле-еле. Там до кивок пошли чуваки, блин. В один момент.
Obey Alliance is not going to be taking the portal back. They are walking
А
around.
здесь...
Potentially they are going to get their pride, and then maybe they'll use the portal to skip.
Здесь прайд плюс БЛ хуярит.
Wazela or something. Let's see what they are up to as PIME, of course, finishing off this Dealer's Iexa boss that is one of the nastier bosses, kind of surprisingly, because of just how much damage is going out as the keystone level goes up. And
no, I'm interested.
Там 6% добивать, но это много тоже. Эльфики очень кайфовые, да, выглядят. Я помню в классике, типа, если кто-то шел за Альянс играть, то это всегда эльфийки были. Это 18-й ключ. Здесь на самом деле ты не можешь не смотреть на высоту ключа, потому что людям 229-й шмот раздали. То есть у них шмот с Динатрия, грубо говоря, фул сет. Поэтому с Динатрия в мифике 229-й шмотки — это что-то совсем жестко. Они тут так мобов стирают, это борода.
Will be able to release once they get back over the stairs, though, and pretty quickly join them on Muezela.
Сегодня было прикольно. 235-й ПВЕ, это с Динатрия. Мифик Динатрия сейчас максимальный, плюс легендар как раз 4-го уровня. И все.
They did not hit Shadow Meld, and if you do not Shadow Meld or drop aggro with any of that trash in the Ardenwald ring, it will eventually snap to you. But the Shadow Meld looks like it is just now finally coming out from Skylark, so it looks like they're just planning on skipping it altogether, which is definitely a little bit of a weird way to do it.
40
and
goes
people
down.
Are dying for both teams.
It seems like 40's death was probably not part of the plan here for Obey Alliance.
Oh, no, this manifestation was the 4th one from earlier.
Okay.
No, the 3rd one from when they hit 60% count. So they need to pull this up to the top of the stairs, get out of combat with it. Man, this is unfortunate for both teams.
It'll leash back to where it lived, right?
Ну, 233-й, да, не суть.
They just have to deal with it. But what?
Да, это well, это такое.
What did PI do to be able to not deal with that manifestation that Obey Alliance isn't doing?
Maybe they spawned it further up. When the manifestation spawns, it spawns based on where your players are. So if you make sure you're a little bit further up, you can potentially avoid that being a problem. However, Obey Alliance,
Блин, там у чуваков 5 смертей, они сейчас из-за этого не
they
успеют.
are going to have the prideful buff for this boss. This is a boss that's a fairly static timer, in that it casts the shadow reality that sends you to each of the 4 different platforms at a fixed time in the fight. And if you have enough damage, you then are killing those 4 mobs, sending 1 DPS player to each platform, and the healer and tank generally to the same platform as each other.
Да, я рассказываю, что этого босса можно убить 4 портала прыгать. Это уже все, по-моему, делают.
The boss dies in 1 cast of that. However, it's an 18 tyrannical keystone. That is everything dying, everything going.
Кто плюс-минус вообще ключи ходят? Даже там 5-е, 6-е и так далее. Не говоря уже там 10 плюс, 15 плюс.
Yeah, I mean, the guys to keep an eye on for sure are the people that we're looking at for PI right now. The tank and healer combo are going to have the biggest issue dealing with their trash mob. The other 3 DPS players can all just use their cooldowns to go ahead and one-shot their mob. Probably, yeah, you'll probably just see the cooldowns all being used there. But yeah, the tank and the healer are the ones that usually have the most issues. So if they're able to get theirs down and click the totem, the rest shouldn't have any issues too. And it looks like Rentari's clicking that totem right now.
Yeah, so these teams are just about 20 seconds or so away from each other in terms of where they are right now. You can see on the small screen, it's going to be PIME who gets the first crack at getting Muezla all the way down to 10% health here. Looks like all their players have successfully channeled on their totems. The question is if any of them have any damage left in the tank here to try and finish the boss here.
Здесь решит, кстати, если кто-то обосрется сейчас и свой тотем не выбьет. Ой, это очень много. 16%, ему нужно до 11 добить. Примерно 11-12% хп.
They have a lot of damage left to do here, but Dr. J is combusting. I think they will be able to do this before they get to the next Shadow Realities cast.
And the thing to remember here as well is that there is still a 20-second.
Проблема в том, что у них еще на 4 смерти больше.
That 20 seconds is very close to being able to make up for it, so it could be really close here at the end.
Там 12, здесь 14, но там не успеют чуваки. Потому что здесь еще смертей больше. Жесть, прикиньте, его вот где-то мистейкнули. Умерли пару раз, из-за этого вам времени не хватило. Жесть, обидно. А могло быть, например, сейчас 1-1, и вы потом, например, потную 3-ю катку еще сыграли. А так сейчас 2-0 проиграет.
No, he doesn't cast it anymore. Once all 4 ads are dead, he never casts it again, and you stay in this phase entirely until their boss dies. But it is down for PIME. 20 seconds on the board for Obey Alliance, and their boss is still at 11%. They need to get through this last percentage of the boss within the next 9 seconds. Otherwise, we're going to be going to a game 3.
5, 4.
3 seconds on the board.
О, 4 секунды. Одна смерть. На одну смерть меньше чуваки умерли бы, они выиграли. Жестко. Жесть какая. Одна смерть решила. Кошмар.
Oh my goodness. Dude, that whole entire run from both sides was absolutely a nail biter. Obey Alliance was ahead going into the final boss. Soft lob there with some prideful shenanigans, but oh my goodness, that was an absolutely nail biter of a series, Jack.
Это жестко было.
And you know, it comes to again widespread between the different seeds that are.
Блин, просто 4 секунды разница. Кошмар, реально просто одна смерть решила. Там остались на сегодня озера. Типа, и там на самом деле не за кем особо смотреть, потому что эхо прошли. Жесткие вот эти челы с ванов, которые перфлекс, они тоже прошли. Ну и тут сейчас чуваки выиграли. То есть, по сути, я сейчас, наверное, все скорее пойду спадки. И закончим на сегодня на этом стримчанский. Завтра соберем либо вечером тусовку какую-то. Ну, то есть, типа, попробуй завтра устроить какой-то, может быть, партийный денек. Там постоянно я смотрю, Андрюха в КС играет. Зовет людей в конфе. Либо, может быть, огненные просторы соберемся. Рейд из катаклизма. Который сейчас, типа, доступен. Если нет, то, в принципе, я нашел Hollow Knight, игрушку себе. Я еще не успел в нее заходить, но я ее скачал. В Стиме уже. То есть можно будет новую игрушку поосваивать завтра, посмотреть. Если что, вдруг. А 24 числа уже пойдем финальчики смотреть вот этого MDI. Вот пока какой-то такой план. А на сегодня будем прощаться. Всем огромное спасибо за просмотр, за фолловы, за все. И увидимся уже завтра. Пока-пока.